Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today, Masechtas Kiddushin Daf Pei. We are going to begin on Ayin Tes Amud Beis, about 12 lines or so from the bottom by the new Mishnah. Says the Masnisa. So you have a nice little family that goes together with his wife to another country. And then all of a sudden, years later, they come back and they had some children. The Omer, and he says, Isha shiatzasimi umdinasiyam harihi zu. Remember the woman that I left to the country with when I went to Israel, and now I'm back in the United States? This is my wife. You may remember. The Elu Baneha, these are our kids. You don't have to bring any proof that this is your wife, because most likely, since you got married before, they would have checked everything out when that took place. And also, you don't have to worry about the children, because they see that the children are with you and they are physically attached to you, so that in itself is a proof this is probably your kids. Mesa, the Elu Baneha, let's say he says, my wife died. Unfortunately, I'm a man who no longer has a wife, but I do have these children. So maybe Ra'el Abanavin, maybe Ra'el Isha. He has to now prove that these are his kids from that woman. Isha Nasasi Mibdinasayam. So this is a woman that I married while I was in Israel. So Harihi Zu, this is her. The Elbanetis are children. So maybe Ra'el Isha means Sarach Ra'el Abanim. So there you have to prove that this is your wife, because she wasn't married here. Mesa the Elbaneha Sarach Ra'el Isha Abanim. This woman, there was a woman that I married in Israel, and she died there. And now I'm back with our children. So you have to prove everything. So says the Gemara, what does that mean? Says Rashi, all these cases, the tiny mastis and ein tzarich lahavi ra'el banim, when it says you don't have to bring proof that these are your children, is bekruchim achoreha, nidbakim etzla, they're attached to you. So if you see a child who is connected to a person, it's pretty clear that that's probably their parent. Tanu Rabbanan. Isha Nasasim Dinasiyam, this woman I married in Israel, maybe Ra'el Isha, so you have to prove that this is your wife. And so maybe Ra'el Abanim, not on the kids. Maybe Ra'el Gedolim, you have to bring a proof regarding the older kids. The Ein Tzarich Lahavi Ra'el Katanim, but you don't have to bring a raya on the younger ones. Okay. So B'medavar Morim B'Ishachas. The only time we say this is if you only have one wife. If you have two wives, so then in that situation, maybe Ra'el Ishmael Habanim Agdam Al Katanim. Once you only have two wives, there's more potential issues and confusion. So therefore, in that situation, you have to bring a raya for everyone. Says Rashi, V'afil Kruchem Achareha, the Shema B'neh Shel Chaverta Hayu V'Gidaltan. So it's possible, even if, let's say, they're connected to you, so there's still potential issues that could arise. Omer Lakish. As we continue to pay him an aleph, Lo Shanu, the only time we say, says Rashi, the Samchina Nakruchim, that we rely on the fact that we see a child who's physically attached to the parent, is Ella B'Kachig Hagvul. It's only, says Rashi, Im Koyinhu Oichim B'Kachig Hagvul, that we're going to allow, based on this, for truma to be eaten by these children, assuming again that this must be a parent who's a kohen. When it comes to yuchsin, says Rashi, if you have daughters, they cannot marry a kohen until it's clear that these are your daughters. No, even when it comes to yuchsin, we're going to be samech on the chazaka, the fact that they're kruchim achareha, these must be your kids. And Rabbi Yochanan goes according to his reasoning, that says that we're samech on a chazaka, as we're going to say, even, says Rashi, Indian din in afashos, when it comes to capital cases, lisakel, in order for the person to get the punishment of skila, the sarf zel zeh. Diam Rav Chiya Rambam Rav Yochanan malkin al chazakos will give someone malchus regarding a situation of a chazaka, even if, let's say, there's no witnesses regarding this matter. Sulkin v'sarfin al chazakos will also give skila and sreifa, these death penalties, even based on a chazaka, which the Gemara is going to explain what that means, because we're usually quite strict before we're going to sentence someone to death, that just based on a chazaka. We ain't sarfin truma al chazakos, but we don't burn truma for a chazaka. It's like, 1 second, to kill the guy, we're going to be serving chazaka, but for to not burn truma, chas v'sholom, because we don't want to burn truma, but it seems a lot worse than killing someone, right? How can you say that? Like, obviously, killing someone should be a lot worse. So obviously, we have to understand this, as the Gemara is going to spend a lot of time going through now. So what exactly is this? That malkin al chazakos. We'll give malchus just based on a chazaka. So it's Rabbi Yehuda. The Rabbi Yehuda, he says, huksaka nida bishchene yoseha balaloika leha mishum nida. So if, let's say, there is a chazaka by the neighbors that this woman is a nida and the husband is boil, since while the nida she wears different garments and your nosy neighbors are going to pick up on this, so that would be enough for the man to get malchus. Mishum nida. Sulkin v'sarfin al chazakos. Again, how often is that going to actually take place? But the idea is that your neighbors, your nosy neighbors, are going to pick up on these types of things. Okay. What's sulkin v'sarfin al chazakos? Kidarabba. Bar Rav Huna. Diamar Rav Huna. Ish v'isha. A man or woman. Tinik v'tinaikis. A young boy or girl, shehigdiloi b'toich habayis, that grew up inside of a house, niskolan zelzem nisrafin zelzeh. They will do skila one to the other, or sreifa to one or the other. So what is that referring to? It means, says Rashi, b'cheska she ishtai. We're going to assume that this is your wife, and these are your children. And therefore, says Rashi, im ba haben al isha, nisko haben alel. If this boy has relations with the woman, to get skila, misham bal imay v'hialav. There's an isser of a child having tashmish with his mother, and therefore you get punishment of skila. And the srafim im ba isha habas to be to b'sreifa, that the daughter would get the punishment of sreifa. So all these things. Obviously you have to have edus that they did this. You have to have edim and hasra and everything. But how do we know for sure that this is the wife? How do we know for sure these are the kids? We're going to assume that. Amar Shimon Pazi, Rabbi Shimon Levi, Misham Bar Kapara, Masabi Isha. There was a story of a woman. Shabas to Yerushalayim. She went to Yerushalayim. V'tinik murkav la al kaseifa. And she had a child literally like on her shoulders, which again pretty much shows that this is her child. V'higdi lasai, and she brought him up. Uval leha, and then they end up having tashmish together. V'avin lebeis din b'sak klum, and they were brought to Beis Din, and skila was done. Woman meshabuna vadai, not because we know 100% this is a son. Since there was this physical attachment, and it was clear that, again, based on the chazaka, we're going to assume that this was a mother-child-son relationship. Vein sarfin truma al hachazakos. We're not going to burn truma. So the Yom Rav Shimon ben Lakish sarfin al hachazakos. According to Rav Reish Lakish, he says we do burn truma based on a chazaka. Rav Yochanan ain't sarfin. So we have a machlokas, Reish Lakish, Rav Yochanan, which we often find this machlokas, Yazla Tamayu, and they go according to their reasoning. Ditnan. We learned in a Mishnah that says like this: Tinik shenimsa beside Isa. Let's say you have a child who is next to a dough, and this is dough which is truma. Also, ubatzik biyadon, he's holding a piece of that dough. Now, Rashi says, biyadua shenatam in Isa. It's pretty clear that he took a piece of this dough, which means he touched it. Now, Rameir matayher v'chachamim matamin. So it's a machlokas whether or not we're going to say this dough is tameh. Maybe it is because it's the way of a child l'tapeach b'shratzim nevelos sheba'ashba. Kids play with dirty things. They're touching rodents and bugs, and which makes them tameh, which in turn would make the dough tameh. Vavinan, but we asked the question, so my time to Rameir. So why would Rameir say it's tahar? Don't we assume that children are touching things and maybe therefore it's they're matama the dough? The truth is, you're right. The majority of kids are touching the veilus and the like. But there is a minority that doesn't. The dough, before this kid came into potential contact with it, or he did come in contact with it, this dough is definitely tahar. Usamach miyut chazaka itra ruba. So since you have a miyut together with the cheskes tahara, it weakens the majority. So therefore, according to him, a miyut with a chazaka is stronger than roiv. Rabbanan miyut command leisa dami. He says no, the miyut is like it's not even there. We go bust a roiv, and therefore once it's roiv, we consider like it's ruba kakuloi, and therefore ruba v'chazaka ruba adif. When you have a roiv against a chazaka, we go bust a roiv. Okay. Amr shlokish mishum Rabbi Ishia zuhi shesarfen aleha es truma. This is a case where we will burn the truma. Rabbi Yochanan Amr ein zu chazaka shesarfen aleha truma. This is not a case of a chazaka where we do so. So the fact that you're saying that this is not the case must be there is a situation where we do. Kiddushin. As we learned, actually it's Kiddushin, it's not a Mishnah, it's instead of Brisa. The Isa b'soich habayis, the person has dough in his house, ushratzim usvardim metaplin sham, and you have, unfortunately, an infestation in your house of frogs, which are tahar, in nature, shratzim, which are tamei in nature, v'nibsu chatichos b'isa, and you find that there are pieces in the dough, which seems like one of something touched this dough. Now, imrov shratzim tameya. If the majority of these things in your house are shratzim, so we're concerned that maybe a sheretz touched this dough, and therefore it's tamei. Imrov svardim tahira. Tanya Kavase to Rabbi Yochanan. Shnei Devarim ein behem das. Lishayil. There's two things that don't have das to ask. Actually, hold on 1 second. Let's go to this Rashi. Imro shratzim. Im abayis muchzekes liyo shratzim mitzuyim sham. Yoisim isfardim tamei. Af l'sarif. You can even burn it if this house is known to have more shratzim. The chazaka of aruba de isa kamanhu. There's a chazaka and a ruba that's in front of us. Aval hahid tinuk ruba de leisa kamanhu. So this is an important svar over here, chiluk. So over here, it's a chazaka and a ruba de isal kaman. However, when it came to the case of the tinuk, it is true that the rove is touching shratzim. However, the leisa kamanhu, the tinuk, we will not burn the dough with a suffix because it's a rove de leisa kaman. It's not a rove that's in front of us. However, it's a rove when it comes to the shratzim in this house. That's a rove, or it's a roiv the isa kamon. So that's the chiluk. Very important Rashi. Okay. So Tani Rabbi Yochanan. Shnei devarim ein behem das lishoyel. Two things don't have das to ask. We're going to see that we're going to matama the rabbanon litlois. We're going to see. And when it comes to, says Rashi, we continue. The Yosem Chachamim kimashish behem das lishoyel. We act as though they do have das to ask. What does that mean? So it's brought down in need, and also Rashi says, we know that we learn out from Sota that Tumah B'Rishus Yachid, because it's in a private place, is where she secluded herself, so the din is Sveiko Tameh. So we say the bedavar she'ein bo das lishoyel kamashmol and defil B'Rishus Yachid Sveiko Tahar. It has to be like a Sota, in which she has das lishoyel. She's someone you could speak to. However, if it's something which, even if it's a suffix Rishus Yachid, but if it doesn't have das lishoyel, then we say it's tahar. So even if we're dealing with a situation which does not have das lishoyel, we make it as though they have das l'shoyel. Tinuk is one situation, as we said, by the case of a tinuk, even though a tinuk ain't lo das l'shoyel, we're going to say suffik tameh, vod acheres. Tinuk ad amran, vod acheres mahi isa b'toich habayis. If you have dough in a house, the tarnagolim u mashkim tameim sham, you have tarnagolim, as well as you have like these roosters and hens, and you have impure liquids sham. The nimsu, when we find as we continue to pay Amid Bays, nikurim beisa, peck marks in the dough. So toilin. So in that situation, we don't know the status of this dough, so we're toilet lo, which means you can't eat it. Again, if this dough is of truma, lo sarfin. However, based on this chash, we are not going to burn it either. The only time we say this is el b'mashkim levanim, if the liquid is white. So therefore it's not discernible that the tarnagle touched this liquid and then transferred the liquid onto the dough. However, if it's a liquid in which has color, so then if in fact this tarnagle would have touch this liquid and then put it onto the dough, then you would be able to see the liquid on the dough because of its color. And therefore, if you don't see it, then we could assume, the tarnagle pecked at it, but it didn't touch the liquids, and therefore the dough is tahar. The dilma, for the Gemara, how do we know? The dilma belatinhu isa. Maybe it got absorbed into the dough. So Rabbi Yochanan never says shama beribi. This is something which I heard from Ribi. And Rashi says this is the Gadol Hador, who was Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi at the time. Uperushal, he said lo shama. His explanation I didn't hear. Lo shana el b'mashkim salulim. That's only we're dealing with clear liquids. She bavua shaltinik nikerba. That the shadow of the tinik, says Rashi, dumus klaster panav, the view of the child would be recognizable. Avo mashkim akurim loy, but not if it is dirty liquids. Okay. Let's see if we have a question here. Question 3. Urabanan di amri miyuta kamandalesa. If you have a roiv which doesn't exist, him starfin truma al roiv. So if there's no rov, so do they say that you were surfing truma al roiv? So this is the important Rashi. Ruba di isa kaman sarfin, like the case that we saw, which Rashi helped us out with over here, that when it came to the shratzim, that's a ruba di isa kamon. So therefore, in that situation, everyone holds that we would burn it. Ruba di leisa kamon is the machlokes Reish Lakish and Rav Yochanan. So that is the again machlokes, whether we say Rav Yochanan says ein zu chazaka shesarfen aleha truma. But the case of Isa b'toich habayis ushratzim svardim metaplin sham v'nimsu chatichais b'Isa. So we go basaroiv. So in that situation, we're going to say that the din is that it's a ruba di Isa kamon, and therefore in that case you would burn it. Okay. Let's see question before we get to the next Mishnah. Question TA 16. TA 16. She says like this: Isha nasasi, oshtein nashim nasasi. I married one woman, or maybe for that matter, it was two women, which is on the very bottom of Ayin Testament Bays. So the question is, Ha'im sarach lahevi raya al abanim. So do you need to bring a raya in that situation? So let's see. This is TA 16. So this is how he answers it. Al gedolim sarach raya, which you always need a raya for the older kids. Al chatanim ein sarach. V'im oimer shtei nashim nasasi. If you said that I was married to two women who meisa achsim and one of them died, the elbanel sarach raya gam al chatanim. So again, that's the chiluk, that it's only maybe when it comes to one wife, there's a chiluk between gedolim and katanim. However, if we're talking about two wives, and then you have to bring a raya. Question TB17. Ve'einin ma saimchen al chazaka shebanim hakruchim acher ha'em boneh ha'hem. Ve'einin ma nechlu im saimchen. So, on some level, it's pretty clear. I'm not sure how I tackled this question. Let's see, this is TB 17, which could be on Ayin Testament Beis, but let's see what I wrote. Im chayzim b'medina sayam, v'yesh isha ubanim. So if he comes back with kids, v'hu oimer shezeh ishtai v'zeh b'ni, this is my wife, this is my kids. Im boidkin, not sure what that says. Lo tzarich livdai kabanim. In other words, if let's say you already were married here, so we're going to assume that we were already daikum sabah, so therefore we're already boidik on the mother, and therefore you don't have to do anything for the kids because the kids are kruchim, because they're attached. Kruchim abo. Okay. Yesh hevdel ben katanim ugedoylim shegedoylim lo saimchen al kruchim. When we're dealing with doilim, rak banim katanim. The gam yesh hevdel im yesh shtei nashim o rak isha achas. I think it's beautifully written, and I think that is a beautiful answer. Okay. TB 18. Tinik shenim sabasada isa. So you have a kid that's found by dough, batzik biyado, ramer matarachamim matamin, v'neshadarkashol tinik l'tapeach, b'man nechu ramer v'chachamim. So this is on Peyam at Aleph. This is TB 18. And again, the shaila is, actually I put it a little bit higher than I should have. This is TB 18. And do we say, rov tinaikas matabchen. However, there's a miyat that are not, and the isas becheskas tahira medes usamach miyuto chazaka itole ruba. So the question is, that does the miyat together with the chazaka weaken the roiv? So I wrote, yesh rov tinaikas shehem matabchen, touch ha'isa. Of yesh miyat tinaikas shloi nageh ha'isa. Him oimrim shemiyat keneged hachazaka im hamiyat kamandalesa. It's like it doesn't exist. Yesh rak chazaka. And then we go basar roiv against the chazaka. O im hamiyat gareya haroiv. Does it weaken the roiv? Interesting. Bekitzer, I wrote this. Bekitzer is not bekitzer. Im miyat yesh koyach keneged hachazaka olo. Okay, beautiful. Weiter. Says the Mishnah on Pamud Beis. Says the Masnisen, Lo yisyachid adam im shtei nashim. A man cannot be miyachid with two women. But a woman will seclude herself with two men. Right? Let's read this again. A man cannot be with two women, but a woman could be with two men. And this is based on, and Rashi says, Shadaitan Kala. Okay, now that Pashut doesn't mean that people mistranslate that as that they're not wise, which is a foolish thing to say, that women, Bizman Azed, there's more women in college than men, right? So that's clearly not a logical explanation. So one of the pshatim is we understand that a man is not going to tolerate in his relationship another man in that relationship, especially as we understand that two men could not be married to one woman, but two women, up until Tekanos Rabbeinu Gershom, two women were married to a man. So there's a different mindset of women being married to multiple women being with a man, a single man, as opposed to the other way around. So Nashim Daitis Kalos means that because two women potentially could accept, at least then, the notion of being with one single man, of sharing a man, so therefore there'll still be an issue of yichud. Mashen came the other way around, because two men are not going to tolerate in a relationship another man in that relationship. And that's the idea. The truth is, one man can be with two women. If, let's say, his wife is with him, and sleeping with them, bepundaki, in a hotel, because his wife guards him. His wife protects him from this yetzer. A person could seclude himself with his mother, v'im bito, with his daughter, yashin imahen bekir basar, and sleep in the same bed even if they're not fully clothed. V'im higdilu, but once they're older, zu yishen b'ksusa, zeh yashin b'ksusai. At that point, they should be properly clothed if they're sharing a similar bed. Says Rashi, v'chein basi mavia, a daughter with a father. Okay. Says the Gemara. So my time, what is the reason that a person should not seclude himself with two women? So he says, Tana de Be'eliyahu hoyav anashim daitin kalos aleihin. Again, it means that these women are more open-minded to the notion of being with one man. Mina hadimili. So how do we know that this is the din? How do we know there's such a concept in the Torah? Shnemar, ki yasischa achicha, that when a person is your brother persuades you, ben imecha, your mother's son, v'chi ben mesis, ben av enu mesis, when only your mother's son, but your father's son is not going to persuade you to maybe do avodah zarah. El loymachot, telling you like this: Bain misyachad imoy, a son can be miyachad with his mother. The also is yachad im kol rashi b'Torah, but it means he's not allowed to be miyachad with anyone else in the Torah. So that's what it means. That's why it says in the pasuk, ben imecha, that you can be your mother's son. They could be together. That's what it's just coming to tell you, because there's not an issue of yichud if it's someone of such a close family member. So Pashta Kroba Maiksiv. Well, okay, that's a nice drasha, but what's Pashup Shot? So Rabbi Loma Boy come, Loma Boy Ben Av. No question regarding your father's son, that Sonny lay, that he hates you, the Ayatzle Eitzes Rois, and he's going to give you bad advice, as Rashi Lafi Shemamayt Bechel Kirushasai, because you take away from his financial inheritance. Elafilu ben aim Deloitte Sanile. There's no financial loss here. Maybe in that situation you'll listen. Kamash one. Nema masnisan Deloitte Kabashah Lasanya. Kol Shloishim Yoim, says all 30 days, says Rashi. Vlad Shemes B'Tesh Shloishim Yoim. You have a child that Rahman al dies within 30 days. You don't have to do all the different things during this infant's death. To take this baby out to a typical burial. A little bit mitav, a little bit kaliva, a little bit chek. You don't need to actually create a casket, but rather you can just carry the baby's remains in your lap, if you will. Kol shoshim yom yoytze b'chek. One woman together with two men. But one man should be with two women. So even then, there's an issue of yichud. Even one man with two women is allowed. So in that situation, he clearly doesn't hold like our Mishnah, because our Mishnah says one man with two women is not allowed. Now, Mishas Aninos Tavri Yitzrei, that at the time of Aninos, your Yetzer Hara is broken. So therefore, even though maybe he normally would say a man cannot be with two women, however, when it comes to a burial in which it's such a devastating time, no one is thinking about the potential of being intimate with one another, and therefore, because of that, he's lenient in that situation. Rabbanan Sarvi Lo Rav Yitzchak, dear Rav Yitzchak, Mayis Oinin Adam. What is the complaint of this man, Chai Gever al Chatov, regarding his sins? Efil b'shas ani nusoi shel adam yitzur misgaber love. Even at the time of aninus, even the saddest time, a person's Yetzer Hara can still remain strong. In fact, perhaps when you are at your most vulnerable time, which is a time of mourning and death, in which you have a lot of emotions going on, that could be a time where Taka is the opposite. You may actually have a stronger Yetzer Hara. V'al b'shoil kiksiv, when this pasuk says this, hahu b'mis ra'im al midaisav ksiv, someone's complaining against the Kadosh Baruch Hu. V'alchad kamer, ma yisra'im al midaisav, v'chi gavar al chatav, what are you doing complaining on Kadosh Baruch Hu? V'chi gavar al chatav, you've conquered over your sins. Dayu chayim shenasati loy, should be happy enough the life that I give you. You should be content and happy. Why are you complaining against Hashem? You should be happy with what you have. Rabbanan ki hahu ma'isa dahi yisasa, there's a story of a woman, Dahavi Uvda, that such a happened Vapikte. Says Rashi, Rabbanan yesh lochish pamim shein shamaninos v'oisen atzma ki'ilu noisim tinuk meis v'yotzen lavera kiahu Uvda Dahavi Uvda bahi yisasa Vapikte latinuk chai becheskas meis v'lasas avera ima hoylech ima l'kairoi. There's an unbelievable Rashi that she pretended her living child was dead in order for her to go to a cemetery area with another man to be able to be intimate with him. So it's possible that a person will use this place as a place of znus in order to be able to, again, no one's going to suspect you, right? Because you think that you're going to a funeral, and the truth is you have other intentions. Taisus over here says something perhaps even more unbelievable. And we're going to actually stop at this point. But look at Taisus. Pershibenu Chanano. So he says, Masmi Shachas. There's a story. Shoisa Boiche, she was crying. Enes Al Kever Bala. She was crying by her husband's grave. Hayasham Adam Echad, there was a man. Shaya Shaimer Toli Shaimer, who's like a guard. Toli Echad V'tzivalo HaMelech HaShaimroi. And his job was to watch a body that was being hung. That was his job. That was his whole job. So he left his station while this man was being hung and dying. Maybe he wasn't dead yet. He had to make sure that he was dead and staying there. But he left his post and he found this woman and he was mafat to her, which means he had relations with her. He had tashmish. V'shamuloi k'shechazar eitzel hatoli lo matzu. They went back, says Taisus, and the person hanging on the tree wasn't there. He was scared the king's going to kill him. So the woman said, Al tira, don't be afraid. Kach baili mikivroi, take my husband's remains, utaleabim koimo, and hang him in the place. So they took her husband's body and hung him, so the king would think that was the guy. That even the time of a ninus, a person's Yetzer Hara can be exceedingly strong. Okay, let's see maybe another question. Question 4. Mi nastu chachamim tam l'davar mishum nashim daitan kalos. So where do we find such a language? So it's again the notion of the din yichud that one man cannot be with two women. Question 4b. Ma hilchas al yalfin mikra ma yisoinin adam chai gever al chatov. So it teaches us that we're not saimach shasaninos l'syachin alphabi to taver yitzrei. That it doesn't make any difference, even though again a person's Yetzer Hara may be extremely strong. Not so strong, we're still chayshid that something may happen there. Okay. Question TA. Okay, I guess I passed over this. So I did already TA 16, but we also have TA 17. Ma hechi timsa cheniska b'mar deloikin al hachazakos. where do we find that a person is going to get malchus on a chazaka? So this is TA 17, and this is that again, if the person is boil nida, his wife who's nida, which is an Issachar, but if the neighbors notice her change of clothing, so then that would be enough for him to be able to get malchus. Let's see what's written over here. TA 17. Hochsuka nida b'shchinoseha ba'aloika aleha. Adkan.